Welcome back to my channel. I am your host, G.I. Wingnut. I stumbled across a little something when I was looking around my state this morning, and I felt compelled to bring it to you because I got to untangle some things, or at least as a researcher, I feel like I need to. So, over here at MissouriNet.com, Biden signs Senator Eric Schmitt's bill to help Americans with disabilities. President Joe Biden has signed Missouri U.S. Senator Eric Schmitt's bill that is designed to help Americans with disabilities. The so-called bill, called Think Differently Database Act, will create a comprehensive website showing state and federal resources available for those with intellectual disabilities. The site will have health care, mental health, and other community-based services within the state Medicaid programs. Quote, I first entered public service because of my son, Stephen, and fighting for individuals with disabilities has always been a top priority for me. I'm extremely proud that this critical piece of legislation was signed into law, but my efforts to improve the lives of those with disabilities will continue, said Schmitt. A zip code feature will help people locate resources in their community. Now, overall, this sounds like a great idea, but given what's inbound with the new administration, it's going to be sworn in here pretty quick in 2025. I've got some concerns. So let's take a look at some of those. So the first thing I want to do is bring up the Think Differently Database Act. And let's go down here and read the actual text. This is H.R. 670 at the second season. Begun and held in the city of Washington on Wednesday, the 3rd day of January, 2024. An act to direct the Secretary of Health and Human Services to establish a website to promote awareness of available resources for individuals with disabilities and other purposes. And other purposes. Being enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America and Congress assembled. Short title. This act may be cited as the Think Differently Database Act. Section 2. Promoting awareness of available resources for individuals with disabilities. Subsection A. In general, no later than 3 years after the date of the enactment of this act, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, in this section referred to as the Secretary, shall establish and update periodically a publicly available website to provide information with respect to resources and information for people with a disability and the caregivers and families of such people. Such website shall include information on eligibility to receive medical assistance under a state plan under the Medicaid program under Title 19 of the Social Security Act. If the Trump administration gets to run their Project 2025 program, that's not going to be a thing because Social Security is going to be gone. I really hope we get the resistance to push back on that to stop it. Number 2, which states offer eligibility under subclauses 13, 15, 16, and 19 of subsection 1902A. Yeah, it's all there. If you want to look it up, you can pause and go to it. 3, each state specific eligibility requirements, if applicable, under subclauses. Information about the contact each state's Medicaid office, information about how to contact each state's Medicaid office for information about Medicaid, including links and phone numbers for state contacts. 5, general information on Medicaid-covered long-term services and supports that may be available to individuals eligible for medical assistance under the state plan, under the Medicaid program under Title 19 of the Social Security Act. Number 6, where applicable, the average amount of time that individuals newly enrolled in a state's waiver program for home and community-based services in the past 12 months were on the list of individuals waiting to enroll in such waiver program in such a manner and process as described in section 441.311D1. Yeah, it's all there. Subsection B, promotion. The secretary shall, as applicable and appropriate, identify and disseminate promotional activities to improve among people with a disability and the caregivers and families of such people the awareness of resources included in the website established under Section A, such as through collaboration with the Social Security Administration during its annual updates in the Red Book. C, model. In establishing the website under this section, the Secretary may use the website thinkdifferently.net as a model. D, non-applicable of Paperwork Reduction Act. Chapter 35 of Title 44 United States Code, commonly referred to as the Paperwork Reduction Act of 1995, shall not apply to the implementation of this section. Okay, so that was just passed into law. I got some more stuff to bring you. All right. So anytime I'm curious about a politician and their motives, I do look them up and I add Palantir or I add Peter Thiel. And it does not surprise me that it shows here in the AI that Eric Schmitt, a United States Senator from Missouri, accurate, and he became our Attorney General after Josh Hawley, we'll get to that later, or another time, has been associated with Palantir Technologies through his work as Missouri's Attorney General and in his previous roles. Palantir is known for its data integration and analysis software, which has been used by government agencies for various purposes, including law enforcement and national security. As Attorney General, Schmitt may have utilized Palantir's technology to enhance the state's investigative capabilities. However, the specific details about his direct involvement with Palantir are not extensively documented in the provided context. I also wanted to point out, again, I'm using Wikipedia just as a reference point, and there, like I've said before, it's important to validate your information. So I wanted to look through here, and yeah, he was Governor Mike Parson, who is leaving office and being replaced by Mike Kehoe this year, 2025, named Schmitt Attorney General of Missouri after the incumbent Josh Hawley was elected to the United States Senate. I'll get to that Christian nationalist later. Anyway, as Attorney General, Eric Schmitt filed lawsuits to have the Affordable Care Act invalidated by courts and sued school districts and municipalities for implementing mask requirements during the COVID-19 pandemic. After Joe Biden won the 2020 election and Donald Trump refused to concede, Schmitt joined the Republicans in falsely claiming fraud. That's a whole nother rabbit hole. What I wanted to get down here to was I also always look up what somebody's home church is or what their background is. And it turns out Schmitt was born in Brighton, Missouri, a suburb of St. Louis, and he graduated from Desmond Jesuit High School in 1993 and from Truman State in 97 with a Bachelor of Arts cum laude in political science. So I'm not going to dive into any more of that. I think it's rather interesting, though, that Schmitt was a founding member of Truman's Habitat for Humanity chapter, seeing as how Jimmy Carter was a big deal with Habitat. So I just thought that was a rather interesting twist. But to validate this Jesuit high school connection, I went over to his About page, and yes, it's right there. It's right there. Yeah, it's right there. Eric Schmitt attended Desmond Jesuit. So do with that what you will. I know there's some conspiracy theorists out there that are going to try to do something with it, and they're more than welcome to. Okay, now what I'm going to do at the moment is I'm going to breeze through a few headlines real quick. I'm not going to get into the articles, but you should be able to see where these articles are. I'm doing this more of as a reminder for folks. But there was a time when the Missouri Attorney General, Eric Schmitt, joined a multi-state lawsuit against Facebook, claiming fraud during the election, the 2020 election. As the Federalist points out, though, just this year, 4 years later, sources say Missouri AG stopped working on investigation into Zuckbox. Well, now, why would that be? Could it be because Zuckerberg recently went and had a dinner with Trump at Mar-a-Lago? Or could it be that Peter Thiel was Mark Zuckerberg's advisor over there at Facebook on the Meta board for like 20 years? It was like one of the first. I think he was the first investor in Facebook and the second largest investor in Facebook. And there are those that can talk about how Project Lifelog, which was a DARPA project, turned into Facebook. I don't know. But Peter Thiel and Palantir do some really wacky stuff. So real quick there on that. Also, Trump confirms he will utilize U.S. military to conduct mass deportations. That I found rather interesting. And that's going to play in here in a bit because I've got a history piece that I'm going to bring to the table. And it's part of the reason why I'm doing it this way. Let's see, I've got one other thing I want to address real quick. And then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of this concern. All right, so let's get down to this last article that I wanted to introduce before I get into the meat and potatoes of my real concerns here. So Donald Trump was accused, this is according to Forbes, was accused of making heartless comment about disabled people dying. And just in the first paragraph, former president and current Republican nominee Donald Trump has been accused of once saying that it might be better for people living with serious disabilities to just die. The startling revelation was laid out in a new book authored by Trump's nephew, Fred Trump III, the son of the former president's older brother, Fred Trump Jr., who passed away in 1991. I'm not going to dive any deeper into that one, but let's go ahead and get back to what I started with. At the beginning of this video, I introduced this article about how Biden signs Eric Schmitt's bill to help Americans with disabilities. And that set off warning signs for me as far as what Mark Twain said about history not repeating itself, but it certainly rhymes. Coming to us from Facing History and ourselves, facinghistory.org, in a chapter entitled A War for Race in Space. Unworthy to Live. Learn about these cats that did medical killing program that was responsible for the murder of mentally and physically disabled people during World War II. As the H-man consolidated his power at home in anticipation of war, he moved not only against Jews, Sinti, and Roma, but also against those Aryans whom he considered unworthy of life, people with epilepsy, alcoholism, birth defects, hearing loss, mental illnesses, and personality disorders, as well as those who had vision loss or developmental delays, or even suffered from certain orthopedic problems. Hitler viewed them as marginal human beings who had to make a case for their own survival at a time when the nation was preparing for war. The first to be eliminated were too young to speak on their own behalf. In fall 1938, the parents of a severely disabled infant petitioned the H-man for the right to kill their child. He granted the petition and saw in the request an opportunity to encourage what he called mercy unalivings or euthanasia. In fact, according to science historian Robert N. Proctor, the goal was not to provide mercy to the victims, but to improve the Aryan race and make hospital beds and personnel available for the coming war. The H-man also thought that the war might minimize protests from Germans who learned of the deaths. According to the H-man's chief medical officer, quote, the Fuhrer was of the opinion that such a program could be put into effect more smoothly and rapidly in time of the war, and that in the general upheaval of war, the open resistance anticipated from the church would not play the part it might in other circumstances, end quote. The following spring, H-man set up a community of physicians to prepare for the murder of mentally and physically disabled children, known as the Reich Committee for Scientific Treatment of Severe Hereditary and Congenital Diseases. The group was told to keep its mission secret. In August 1939, just 2 weeks before the invasion of Poland, committee members asked doctors and midwives to fill out a questionnaire that would identify children born with various deformities and disabilities. Initially, the focus was on children under the age of 3. The committee claimed it was using the information, quote, to clarify certain scientific questions, end quote. In fact, it was used to determine which children would be allowed to live. The committee relied entirely on the questionnaire in making its decisions. Members did not examine a single child, consult with other physicians, or speak to the families involved. Once a decision was made, the committee told the children's parents only that their baby was being placed in a special hospital to improve treatment. There, death came quickly. After the war, a physician involved in the program told Robert J. Lifton, an American psychiatrist, quote, according to the thinking of the time, in the case of children, killing seemed somehow justifiable, whereas in the case of an adult mentally ill, it was definitely murder, end quote. The physician went on to describe how nurses were ordered to give children sedatives that were harmless in small amounts but deadly in large doses. The doctors noted, quote, and with these sedatives, the child sleeps. If one does not know what is going on, the child, is sleeping. One really has to let in on it to know that, or has to be let in on it to know that. He really is killed and not sedated, end quote. Lifton added, while Dr. F admitted that one might wonder about a child, quote, why is he sleeping so much, end quote, he insisted, quite erroneously, that one could ignore that inner question because the death rate of those killed wasn't much above the regular death rate of such children. He stressed the absence of either a direct command, if you get the order to kill, I think I would refuse, but certainly there is no such order, or manifest homicide. I mean, if you had directed a nurse to go from bed to bed shooting these children, that would not have worked. As a result, there was no killing, strictly speaking. People felt that this is not murder, it is a putting to sleep, end quote. In addition to the use of drugs, victims were murdered by a variety of other methods, including poisoning, starvation, being left to die of exposure in unheated buildings, and gassing. The operation was later expanded to include not only children but also teens and adults, and even given a code name, T4. One euthanasia expert excused the murders by arguing, quote, the idea is unbearable to me at the best, the flower of our youth. must lose its life in the front in order that the feeble-minded and asocial elements can have secure existence in the asylum, end quote. Another suggested that a physician's duty is to rescue the fit for the future by weeding out the unfit in the present. Although the Nazis considered the euthanasia program top secret, it was a difficult secret to keep. Some Germans were certain to notice the sudden deaths of large numbers of disabled people at various institutions in their community, and Nazi officials struggled to find satisfactory explanations. In addition, family members often grew suspicious of the sudden deaths of patients soon after their transfer to new facilities, which were in fact killing centers. The Nazis also made bureaucratic mistakes in their notifications of the families of victims, sometimes claiming the cause of death that seemed unlikely, if not impossible, such as claiming that a burst appendix caused the death of a child whose appendix had already been removed. According to the scholar Carol Poor, it was late summer of 1940, or by the late summer of 1940, the euthanasia program had become common knowledge among Germans and in other countries. Among Germans who knew of the euthanasia program, many supported it. In some cases, the parents of mentally or physically disabled children, quote, were eager to rid themselves of the stigma of having defective children, end quote. Radical ideology and propaganda in the 1930s had also helped build support in Germany for eliminating mentally ill adults. In addition, according to Proctor, doctors were never ordered to murder psychiatric patients and handicapped children. They were empowered to do so and fulfilled that task without protest, often on their own initiative. Hitler's original memo was not an order, but an empowerment, granting physicians permission to act. In some places, doctors used mobile gassing vans to carry out these killings. By June 1940, the vans were being replaced with gas chambers that resembled showers. Proctor added, by August 24, 1941, when the first phase of this adult operation was brought to an end, over 70,000 patients from more than 100 German hospitals had been killed, end quote. The operation would turn out to provide a model for the subsequent murder of millions of Jews, Roma, Sinti, and others in the gas chambers. So there's the connection questions that were noted through the article. And it looks like probably some footnotes, maybe? I don't know. It only goes through question 5. Anyway, now I'm not necessarily saying that this is what the intentions are behind this bill. I'm just saying there's a lot of things that are going on, and I will continue to be bringing these parallels between past history and current behaviors that we're seeing play out. So I hope this video was informative to you. I hope that it may answer some questions as to some of the ideologies and things that are going on. I'm not saying for sure that this is what the overarching plan is, but there's a whole lot that just doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, if you haven't subscribed and you haven't given me a thumbs up, please, that would help the algorithm. And feel free for sure to share out this video. I hope you all have a great time. Until the next video, take care of yourself. Remember, mental health matters. And I'll see you on the next one. Everybody.